Hello and welcome to the Doof Book Club, our monthly live stream discussion of a book chosen by you, our listeners. My name is Matt Freeman, Blue Button Mandarin of the Celestial Kingdom, and this is my co-host, Scott Daly, Baron Equity Level Lord of the Neo-Victorian File.
Of course, and I understand what all those things mean. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope you're all having a wonderful Friday evening. I'm sure we know a lot of you folks in chat, but if you are joining us for the very first time, hello and welcome. We are Doof Media, and we make podcasts all about the stories that we love. We also arrange and organize this monthly book club that you're attending right now. Matt, explain what this thing is.
Each month, Scott and I select 5 books from a pool submitted to us by our wonderful Doof community. We put up a poll for all of the supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia, and we let them vote on which they'd like us to talk about. The book with the most votes wins, and then we all read it.
That's right, and then we meet up on the last Friday of every month, or tonight, and we chat about the book. Matt and I pull slides of important or interesting moments, and we take a deep dive into this story for a couple of hours. For those of you in the chat right now, hello. Feel free to make comments and ask questions as we go. The reason we're doing this online, as we always say, is because we want it to be an interactive chat. So hello. We see Mary in chat. We see John. I see Tringard. I see Kirk. I see Kyrgyzstan. Both Kirk and Kyrgyzstan.
It's going to be rough.
Notice that I said Kyrgyzstan's name like I appreciated and liked them, which I know in the past is something that you did not like doing.
Oh, come now.
Hey Matt, why don't you go ahead and tell us, as people are saying hi, why don't you go ahead and tell us what book the patrons picked this month?
I deserve that, Kyrgyzstan. All right. This month, the patrons picked The Diamond Age, or A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer by Neal Stephenson from Goodreads. The Diamond Age is a post-cyberpunk novel by Neal Stephenson. It is, to some extent, a science fiction coming-of-age story focused on a young girl named Nell and set in a future world in which nanotechnology affects all aspects of life. The novel deals with themes of education, social class, ethnicity, and the nature of artificial intelligence.
Man, look at Goodreads go. That's pretty well done.
It's pretty good. Yeah, the first thing I notice about it though is that it doesn't even attempt to summarize the story, right? It's just like, look, there's a bunch of stuff in there. Here's some of the themes. Take it or leave it.
Do you want to summarize the story?
No. I mean, it's difficult, right? You've got several major characters who are all sort of.
I can learn to understand.
But I guess you could say on the macro level, it's the story of like the conflict between
I can learn to
this Chinese ethnic file and the Neo-Victorian file. And it's kind of being played out through all these different avenues. And really, it's almost a clash between these two philosophies that kind of ramifies itself across different characters and from the level of technology to the level of human interaction.
Yeah. So this is a book that you have read many times, right? Right, many times.
Yeah, at least a few times for sure. Yeah, I mean, I love Neal Stephenson. He's top of my list of favorite authors, probably up there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, one of his better books. I think we might talk about, I don't know. So Scott, what were your overall impressions of this book? Because
oh man, that's tough. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. I'll say that. This is a book, I think that it's a book of so many ideas. It's a book of so many things it's thinking about and talking about that I feel like thinking about and talking about the book was more fun for me than reading the book. There were moments where this book really sucked me in and I was just there with it and I was reading very quickly and fastly and didn't want to stop. And then there's moments where I just felt like it dragged and I was just like, what do we do? What are we doing now? What's going on? Why are we doing this? And so I mean, overall, I think I liked it. It's a good book. I think it's a good book. It's well written. I think it has a lot of very fascinating ideas, but I am not sure I get it. This is one of the shows that I feel the least prepared for out of any of ours, because I'm hoping that you can kind of school me on what this book is about, because I have some idea, but I left the end of the book going, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably taken me, a good 10 years to process the book. And I'm not even saying that I've like processed what Stevenson was trying to get across. More what I mean is I've kind of taken all of the ideas and turned them all around in my head until I feel like I get what I think he was trying to say, where he was going, what he was trying to explore. And I've actually sort of incorporated it into my thinking. But I think this is actually sort of a thing that Stevenson does. Is he reminds me a bit of Heinlein, actually, in that he will take a bunch of crazy ideas and just throw them out and play with them, and take them to their conclusions in some cases, and in other cases just experiment with them. And in either case, I don't know if he's necessarily like coming to a conclusion so much as he is
Sure.
showing you like, hey, here's something you've probably never thought about, and he's usually right.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think he just like that's one of the things so for reference, I've only read this book and Snow Crash. Those are the only two books of Stevenson's I've read, so I'm certainly not an expert on him in any way. But it does seem like he just loves to explore, and I mean, I don't think things like plot coherence are things he's like overly interested in, you know? And I don't mean that as an insult. I just think that's like secondary to him exploring an idea. And he uses plot and character to get his head around these kind of ideas. But I think like that's always the background element.
Yeah, sure. I mean, definitely. I hadn't read it in a long time, and so on this read through, I was like, wow, this section sure is meandering, and we're not really sure what we're doing here or why we're here. I'm specifically thinking about the part where Hackworth is on the boat, and doing like the ractive vision thing, and I was just like, oh my god, like I've read this book several times and I don't even remember what the hell this is doing. Like, but I mean, after you're done with it, you kind of get it, but during it, you're just like, okay, this is basically a dream sequence.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that even I, as a big fan, am capable of being like, I don't know about this. But
yeah.
Well, all right.
How about folks in chat? How is this the first time you've read this book? Have you read it many times? I think it seems like most of the people in this chat are very much on team Stevenson, and I've read this book before. But what do you think of I just blanked of the Diamond Age? Like Snow Crash popped in my head and I couldn't get it out. What do you think of the Diamond Age? By the way, are we landing on primer? Are we going to say primer, not primer? Is that what we're going to do?
We had a big argument about this a while ago on the Discord. And,
I know.
Primer is, interestingly, the correct American pronunciation. So
that seems
primer.
wrong. That seems wrong.
And also I did the audiobook and they say primer. So
I don't like it.
Kirk says that they read this book 20 years ago and have read it many times since.
So like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they know that I am correct about the pronunciation. Tringard says they've read Snow Crash many times, and this book only once in their late teens. Go ahead.
That's a good question. As a Stevenson expert, do you like this book more than Snow Crash?
I like this book. I think this is a better book than Snow Crash. I will say that the first like 50 pages of Snow Crash are my favorite beginning of any book ever. Just like from the first sentence, you're just sucked in. Like I can't tell you how many times I've read like the first 100 pages of Snow Crash and then just kind of petered out. John says they loved it, though it's a tough book to get into. In some ways, it feels like a Victorian era novel where the narrative will pause for pages at a time to ruminate on some idea. I agree, and I think that's intentional. I mean, the prose is also this in some places it becomes very like flowery and sort of like detached and sterile in a way that isn't actually necessarily Stevenson's norm. It's like he is taking on the guise of like he's writing a Victorian novel where you're sort of supposed to poke at feelings with a long stick and not really dwell on them too much.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, we're about to get to the Bud section in the early part of the novel, and I think that felt much more Snow Crashy to me than anything after Bud is summarily executed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as Kirk is saying, the headings, the chapter headings are like a Victorian era novel device. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think in many ways he's trying to write a sci-fi Victorian novel, which I think is kind of delightful. I don't know. I just like the idea of it makes me happy. I'm like, oh, that's such a cool idea. I love it. And that's going to be my opinion on this book throughout this conversation is, oh, I love that idea. I don't always love the execution of it.
Sure. Knuckles says it was their first time reading anything by Stephenson, and it was pretty interesting, but definitely different. Yeah.
That is true. That is true. Like that ending. I can't wait till we talk about that ending. If that's what you can call it. Can we call it an ending? I don't know.
The part where the book stops.
Yes. That's the part where you turn the page and there are no more words and you go, oh. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think everybody's given their reaction now. Maybe we should get started talking about the book.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we begin as usual with the opening of the book. That's how we always do these book clubs. And here is where we meet Bud, the main character of the novel. That was a joke. A Theet visits a mod parlor. Noteworthy features of modern armaments. The bells of St. Mark's were ringing changes up on the mountain when Bud skated over to the mod parlor to upgrade his skull gun. Bud had a nice new pair of blades with a top speed of anywhere from 100 to 150 kilometers, depending on how fat you were and whether or not you wore arrow. Bud liked wearing skin-tight leather to show off his muscles. On a previous visit to the mod parlor 2 years ago, he had paid to have a bunch of sights implanted in his muscles. Little critters too small to see or feel that twitched Bud's muscle fibers electrically, according to a program that was supposed to maximize bulk. Combined with the testosterone pump embedded in his forearm, it was like working out in a gym night and day, except you didn't have to actually do anything, and you never got sweaty. The only drawback was that all the little twitches made him kind of tense and jerky. He'd gotten used to it, but it still made him a little hinky on those skates, especially when he was doing 100 clicks an hour through a crowded street. But a few people hassled Bud, even when he knocked them down in the street, and after today, no one would hassle him ever again.
There's lots to talk about here, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I fully appreciated how great this beginning is until now. But there is. I mean, okay, let's take it from the top. It begins with the ringing of the changes on the mountain, which is the same way it ends, which is nice. We got the idea of the skull gun, which is very Snow Crash, right? Like this could fit. This could be right out of Snow Crash, right? It's like wacky. Yeah. It's almost silly.
Well, I think Snow Crash literally begins with the protagonist like going ridiculous speeds down the highway delivering pizza, right? Like that's like talking about all this cool new gadgets he gets, right? Like that's
true.
That's almost exactly how it begins. So
and there's somebody on a skateboard on a high speed skateboard in that book.
Yeah, exactly. And like I just want to talk about the idea of the phrase skull gun because like when you first read it, you're like, what does that mean? Right? And it's like, what could that be? And you're like, your mind is turning. And then eventually it's just literally, oh, it's just a gun in your head. They just put a gun in your head. And it hurts real bad every time you fire it. But you get to just look at stuff and blow it up. And that's like the first real introduction of like what nanotechnology is in this world, is that they just install this gun in people's heads that they can give voice commands to.
And another thing that's really standing out to me about this is that Bud is like, anathema to everything that the book is saying about society, where he has taken the easy way out in every possible regard. He has used the nanotechnology to sort of take shortcuts where he doesn't have to do any work, and he's an awful person. He's sort of like the worst person in the world, and in every way that like the Neo-Victorians and the Confucians would jointly agree. And like, so that's who he is. That's what he represents in the story. Jesse is saying that they couldn't stand Bud so much it almost knocked him out of the book, but blowing him up was a good decision.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I wish I had little things I could put in my muscles that would make them exercise without me having to do anything. That'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is much later in the book. It's actually sort of like directly stated that the Vickies have to do calisthenic routines, and they have like maids who are their exercise servants, and it's like, yeah, they could just get these little sites that they never have to work out, but that it like it's bad. It's bad for your spirit, or at least that's their belief.
Right,
It'll be
right.
interesting because go ahead.
No, I love the Victoria. Like, I love this concept of these people that, like, the highest class people in this futuristic world are people that don't do any of that stuff. But of course they do. Just not, they just pick and choose the things that are okay to use nanotechnology for, and the things that are just not acceptable to use nanotechnology for.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's really fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I love the whole opening Bud section. Like, I think it does ease you into the world pretty. It kind of holds your hand into it, because I mean, I think one of the big things that the book wants you to understand is these files, right? These groups, and one of the things that the Bud section does is we notice he steals from a man, a black man, because Bud is racist as shit. And like, God, all the characters in this book are racist as shit. Is there any character in this book that's not horribly racist? I don't know if
no. I mean that's like a major theme. Is that this is a world where everything's broken down, and we're gonna have a slide and a couple of slides where we talk about the files more. But just to preface that, like, it's a world where society is broken down to the extent that people have just sort of circled the wagons with the groups that they think that they can find safety and security with. And a pretty convenient way of doing that is to use ethnicity. And so everybody has become super racist.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's fascinating. Well, it's fascinating the way in which Stevenson accentuates that by every description of another character in the book starts with what race they are. Like, every single one. Anytime we meet a new character, the first adjective to describe them is their race or their skin color. And it really accentuates the fact that this is the most important discerning factor in this society. And to kind of circle back to what I was talking about, though, like, the book eases us into how important these files are by showing that Bud, attacks one person, robs from one person, and his entire group, his entire file, like, descends on him to get revenge for that one person, because that's just how this world works. That, like, it's, these communities are so tight knit, and you are not just a member, like of course depending on the different files, of course, but it's just a really great way to show, like it was very surprising that, like, people would seek out to this level, like, to seem like they were coming for a convention, but no, they're just coming to get you, one person who stole just a few things and just had the audacity to stand up to this group. We're going to single you out specifically. I thought it was just a great introduction to how this world works.
Yeah.
And then he's summarily executed. Like, it's almost like in the most wonderful way, right? Like, it's shocking and awful. I love it.
Yeah, right. I mean, I love how much Bud sucks, and you're happy and excited when you realize that he's gonna reap what he sows. Yeah, which is a pretty fun place to be in, with, like, the protagonist, with, like, who you think might be the main character of your book. But yeah, no. I remember, like, the first time I read that being, like, really surprised, because it's like, oh, this is clearly a lawless, chaotic world like Snow Crash, and then, like, out of nowhere, basically, justice coalesces around Bud and zaps him like a bug zapper. And it's very cool, because you're like, yeah, I can see how that could work. It's so alien from how justice is treated in our world. Yeah, but
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk in a little bit about his execution specifically.
Oh, I didn't know you. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, so that's really all I had on this one. I think it's a great introduction. I really do.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to move on to the big science fiction idea that is this book. The one word that you could use to describe what the science fiction aspect of this book is nanotechnology. And towards the very beginning of the book here, we are introduced to its promise and potential at the birthday party for Princess Fiona. The smart coral burst out of the depths with violence that shocked Hackworth, even though he'd been in on the design, seen the trial runs. Viewed through the dark surface of the Pacific, it was like watching an explosion through a pane of shattered glass. It reminded him of pouring a jet of heavy cream into coffee, watching it rebound from the bottom of the cup in a turbulent fractal bloom that solidified just as it dashed against the surface. The speed of this process was carefully planned, sleight of hand. The smart coral had actually been growing down on the bottom of the ocean for the last 3 months, drawing its energy from a supercon that they'd grown across the sea floor for the occasion, extracting the necessary atoms directly from the seawater and the gases dissolved therein. The process happening below looked chaotic, and in a way, it was. But each lithocule knew exactly where it was supposed to go and what it was supposed to do. They were tetrahedral building blocks of calcium and carbon, the size of poppy seeds, each equipped with a power source, a brain, and a navigating system. They rose from the bottom of the sea at a signal given by Princess Charlotte. She had awakened to find a small present under her pillow, unwrapped it to find a golden whistle on a chain, stood out on her balcony, and blew the whistle. So they just built a fantasy island.
Yeah.
For a birthday party.
It's great. I made a mistake. I guess it was Princess Charlotte, not Princess Fiona.
I thought so. Yeah.
It's different, but anyway.
Fiona's only a princess in her mind.
Yeah. Right. So like this is where I just want us to talk about the nanotechnology, because despite the fact that this book centers around nanotechnology, like it's actually kind of a background element, right? It's just sort of the like this is a cool idea, isn't it? I mean, it really is. You can get really sucked into the idea of nanotechnology. I think it's not too far off base to say that a big reason why I chose my undergraduate major is that I wanted to be like a nanotechnology engineer, and that was like the closest there was to it. And I was like, well, I'm sure they'll develop Diamond Age style nanotechnology when I'm older, and then I'll be able to do that.
By the time I'm out of college, 4 years later, they'll have nanotech, right?
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah. But I survived anyway.
Still holding on hope for that.
Still holding on hope. Yeah. But like it's such a fun idea because I mean, nanotech is something that is kind of it's in a lot of stories, but it's not explored nearly as much as it is in this story. And the idea that you can just sort of like make practically anything out of seawater or what have you is he gets to deal with like high tech and also post scarcity at the same time, because fundamentally it's a weird society, right? Because it's post scarcity in the sense that they can build anything as long as they have access to raw materials, but like the access to the raw materials is still something that's controlled in a way that almost seems like artificial, like a power game.
It's so funny, as you're saying that I saw Kirk's message in chat, which is basically the same thing that you were just saying, but I totally agree. Like we see that there's like free stuff, right? Like there's free things, there's free food, there's free supplies, all this you can get out of a matter compiler. But there's also stuff that costs money, and there's stuff that you can compile that costs money. And it seems just artificially generated and controlled. Like the protocols, right, seem to have built scarcity into a system that doesn't have scarcity, like specifically. Like that's what they wanted to do.
Right.
Because there's like classism and the haves and have-nots seem to be a thing that the haves are very, very important in establishing and controlling, even if there's no competition of resources really anymore.
Like there are still poor people, even though those poor people have all of their material needs met, and they basically just like Nell's mother Tequila, they just kind of they have no real prospects, and they have no real meaningful role in society. And the thing that defines the book is pretty clear. The thing that defines like the powerful files is, okay, do they have technological power? Do they have technological expertise? And that's, they specifically say like, that's why the Neo-Victorians and the Japanese are like at the top of the pile, because they have all of the technical expertise.
I really like the writing here, though. I mean, just like the smart coral burst out of the depths with a violence that shocked Hackworth, even though he'd been in on the design, which I think not only is a cool thing to see, it's also really good at establishing who Hackworth is as a character. Like he's the kind of guy that's gonna get like taken aback and shocked by things, even if he knows they're gonna happen. Like that's just kind of who he is. He's such a funny, interesting character, this guy. I was kind of shocked at the ending where it's like, I am the alchemist and I am the maker of the seed, and I was like, what?
Well, so I've always thought his character was really, really interesting, because he reminds me of like every engineer that I've ever met in my life, where they don't get why they're not in charge.
Sure.
Because they're like, I'm smart. I'm probably smarter than my manager. Why am I not in charge? And it's like this book actually tackles that directly by, I think I might have even pulled a slide on this. I'm not sure, but basically it's like because you have to have these sort of almost psychotic level of risk-taking personal qualities
Mm-hmm.
to rise. Like the difference between Finkel McGraw and Hackworth is subversiveness. I did pull a slide on this, so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
we can
Yeah, we'll
put a
just circle
pause on
back
that
to that. Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah. Cool.
But yeah, I mean, the nanotech's going to come up again in this conversation, I'm sure. But I wanted to focus on it a bit because it is the science fiction conceit of the story. Um, so,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course, by the end we have the idea of the seed, where it's like, no, we want to democratize this nanotech completely. We want to completely cut any kind of power structure. And it's interesting because like almost at the same time they introduced that idea, they also introduced the idea that like, oh great, you want to give everybody in the world the ability to make nuclear weapons for free automatically. That's not smart. And it's
Yeah.
like you're like, oh, that's true.
Well, and correct
Shoot.
me if I'm wrong, doesn't our protagonist like specifically stop that from happening? Like
I think
she
he
prevents the seed?
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe our other listeners can help because that's something that I don't know if I've ever quite processed correctly because, Dr. X basically says like you got to give us the seed, man, and Hackworth's like, no, that's a terrible idea, and then that's basically the end of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And like if he has a change of heart beyond that point, it was so subtle that I wasn't convinced that it actually happened. So, so yeah, but what do people? We'll keep going, but I want people to tell us what they think. Does Hackworth make the seed?
Yeah,
Is
the whole mess of all the refugees going down to the drummers and interacting with the drummers and passing on the data to turn Miranda into the sacrifice that's going to make the seed that Nell ends up stopping? Is that part of Hackworth's plan, or is that just a thing that happens outside of his sphere of control? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we can move on, and
Yeah,
people can respond to that question.
Yeah.
All right. So here, Bud, having mugged the wrong family, considers what file he should take up with for protection. The Vickies wouldn't take him in a million years, of course. Almost all the other tribes were racially oriented, like those Parsis or whatever. The Jews wouldn't take him unless he cut a piece of his dick off and learned to read a whole nother language, which was a bit of a tall order since he hadn't gotten around to learning how to read English yet. There were a bunch of Cenobitical files, religious tribes, that took people of all races, but most of them weren't very powerful and didn't have turf in the least territories. The Mormons had turf and were very powerful, but he wasn't sure if they'd take him as quickly and readily as he needed to be taken. Then there were the tribes that people just made up out of thin air, the synthetic files, but most of them were based on some shared skill, a weird idea, a ritual that he wouldn't be able to pick up in half an hour. Finally, sometime around midnight, he wandered past a man in a funny gray jacket and cap with a red star on it, trying to give away little red books, and it hit him. Sindero. Most Cinderistas were either Incan or Korean, but they'd take anyone. They had a nice clave here in the least territories, a clave with good security, and every one of them, down to the last man or woman, was batshit. They'd be more than a match for a few dozen Ashantis, and you could join any time just by walking in the gates. They would take anyone, no questions asked. So I specifically pulled this out to be our place to talk about files,
Mm-hmm.
and also I think to talk about like how justice is carried out, because like there are no nation states. Like there's that you can sort of say like the Celestial Empire is like the remnants of China,
Sure.
and they sort of do have like territory, but they're actually less powerful than some of these files that just have areas here and there and wherever.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of files as like just something that happens when resources are no longer scarce. So, like it basically argues the countries don't need to exist anymore. Like it's just not necessary in this world. So people just form obviously kind of ethnic groups, mostly ethnic groups, and they're part of that tribe no matter what location they live in, right? Like it took me a little bit of time to realize that Atlantis/Seattle was not like two different places, but just this is the Atlantis area in the city of Seattle.
Yeah. It's like an embassy where, you're actually on American soil when you're in an American embassy in another country, but it's a large area and it's very, very similar to the concept of Franchulets from Snow Crash. And I mean, I think it's literally a direct descendant. Like I think this is a Snow Crash sequel basically, because that was a world where like cryptocurrencies had shattered, the United States. And so everything was like corporations. Like you could go into like a McDonald's and you were under McDonald's law. And I think that was supposed to be kind of tongue in cheek in Snow Crash. Whereas I think this is supposed to be much less tongue in cheek. This is much more of a like, look, this is what people might do if you sort of gave them, future tech, but then just, really, really disrupted society and destroyed, the ability of governments to tax people and stuff like that.
Sure.
You'd end up with something like this.
What happened at the end of Snow Crash? It's been a few years since I've read it, and I honestly do not remember the end because like I'm trying to because I have heard that this is the sequel to Snow Crash, but I don't remember the end of that story. So I'm trying to in my head connect how we got from there to here.
I don't think it's like a direct connection because all that really happens is the hero successfully stops the bad guys from spreading their brain virus. They save the day, and he gets the girl, and that's basically the end. Yeah, like it's not like they change society in a way that would lead toward this. I think Kirk has a good comment, which is like Snow Crash is like anarchy basically, which has now been given some ambiguous amount of time to settle down into structure once again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also a character in this book who was in Snow Crash.
Wait, who?
The woman who reminisces about riding her her skateboard on the freeway.
I don't remember that at all.
Miss Matheson.
Oh.
Miss Matheson is YT from Snow Crash.
Oh my god, I missed that completely.
Yeah, that's the Easter egg I was talking about earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's funny because I like now that I have had many years to think about this book, like I think when I first read it when I was younger, I was way more interested in the nanotech stuff, and now I'm way more interested in like the synthetic files and the sociological stuff that he's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the thing that gripped me most is just the concept of the primer, but I agree the file stuff is just so interesting. Just watching how the society constructs itself, and then we kind of see how that what happens to it when it's like pressured from an outside invasionary force, which is like I kind of love how the hand like is just backgrounded for like the entire book. Like we like occasionally the book will like, oh yeah, these people are like getting angry and like trying to make inroads and fighting, and then like it all spills over at the very, very end of the book. We're like, oh yeah, suddenly we have to take this thing seriously.
Yeah.
It's like it's there the whole time, but you just kind of don't pay any attention to it because all the characters are like, whatever, this is not my problem.
Yeah, it is funny to me how like Nell, for a specific example, is like making all these life choices where you're like, why are you in this city and why haven't you left yet?
Yeah.
And I think honestly, it's like this is how it kind of goes in real life. Is like nobody wants to be like it's like something's always going on. We can't not go to that country just because they're having unrest, and and then it pops off.
Sure.
So
you want to talk about justice a little bit, right? Because we see Bud is picked up and executed, but like if he theoretically, if he would have gotten to Sendero in time, they would have protected him, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, like he's right there. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like countries without extradition in our world, but like much more so, like to the extreme.
Well, they would have it's interesting because I almost don't know what would have happened because they would have protected him, but then the file that was chasing him might not have just given up immediately.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, now you've basically created an international incident where, it's possible they have some kind of relationship or negotiation between, what do you do when a person from their file does a crime against someone from your file, and maybe they would be like, all right, we'll serve justice on him because now he's part of our file. Who knows? But basically they grab him, and I think the cool thing is like they don't actually just punish him. They take him to Judge Fang, who is basically a judge of like this regional area. This and the area I guess is governed by like protocol, which is sort of an international agreement of some kind.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it strikes me as being very realistic and very reminiscent of some of Stevenson's other books where it's like the actual um, legal arrangements that things fall into are always like extremely unintuitive and weird and not something that anyone would have ever designed on purpose. They're just kind of accidents of history.
Yeah, yeah. Which yeah, that strikes me as very realistic. I think one of the things this also does to me is kind of expose the concept of files as like this hyper like patriotic's the wrong word, but like they're kind of built up, especially the Victorians, as like we're immensely proud of our group and who we are and our identity and all and expanding our influence on the world and all these things. But like I feel like most people that exist in this world treat them like Bud does, or we see Fang just kind of ditch his group and go to the next one when it becomes politically convenient for him, right? He finds himself in a pickle. He doesn't want to have to make a choice, and he's just like, I'm out. And so like we see like I just like we see how willing people are to just hop ship and move on to the next one when it's convenient. And so like it kind of rips down the concept of these as like a group that you're proud of. It's more like what can do the most for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. Yeah. Or it's interesting because I saw Fang's defection as more of like a moral decision where he was like, all right, I can't be, I'm not doing good here, and I feel like this is contrary to my morals, and so he defected because you're right that it was sort of politically expedient for him, but also like he clearly did put the Confucianism in this extremely high regard, and Dr. X had basically made this sort of very subtle case to him that like, look, if you really take these philosophical precepts seriously, then you should join us.
Yeah. I mean, for some reason, I think you're right. For some reason, I got in my head that Fang was this like the way I imagined in my head is this like he's successfully navigated the system and he's just like very wily in his ways to benefit from systems. And so I saw that defection as less moral based. But on reflection, I think you're right that I think it was much more. He was challenged on a moral level, did not know how to respond, and decided to go with morality.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Cool.
All right, so let's meet Nell. Nell, the main character who we meet as a small girl, is given the primer by her brother, Harv. Both hands, Harv admonished her. It's heavy. Nell reached out with both hands and took it. Harv was right. It was heavier than it looked. She had to lay it down on her lap or she'd drop it. It was not a box at all. It was a solid thing. The top was printed with gold letters. The left edge was round and smooth, made of something that felt warm and soft, but strong. The other edges were indented slightly, and they were cream-colored. Harv could not put up with the weight. Open it, he said. How? Harv leaned towards her, caught the upper right corner under his finger, and flipped it. The whole lid of the thing bent upward around the hinge on the left side, pulling a flutter of cream-colored leaves after it. Underneath the cover was a piece of paper with a picture on it, and some more letters. On the first page of the book was a picture of a little girl sitting on a bench. Above the bench was a thing like a ladder, except it was horizontal, supporting it at the end by posts. Thick vines twisted up the posts and gripped the ladder, where they were burst into huge flowers. The girl had her back to Nell. She was looking down a grassy slope sprinkled with little flowers towards a blue pond. On the other side of the pond rose mountains, like the ones they had supposedly had in the middle of New Chusan, where the fanciest Vickies of all had their estival houses. The girl had a book open on her lap. So first of all, I love that Stevenson describes what a book looks like from the perspective of a person that does not know what a book is. I think that's so wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I actually really love Stevenson's descriptive writing. Like one phrase of his, not from this book, but like it always sticks in my head is like the helicopter came into land and turned around like a dog looking for a place to sit. And I'm always like, that's the perfect way to describe what helicopters do when they come into land. But like that's the thing that he does. He finds a way of getting you to imagine what he wants you to imagine. I think it's really a skill of his, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the left edge was round and smooth, made of something that felt warm and soft but strong. The other edges were indented slightly and they were cream colored. Like I have a hardcover book right here, and that's just like, yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. I also like how when he's doing the prose of a different character, he'll kind of slip into their style very much. I mean, it's kind of a standard character voice thing. I just think he does a good job. Like when he's Hackworth, he writes like Hackworth thinks. When he's writing Nell, he writes in these short sentences like,
Yeah.
It was not a box at all. It was a solid thing, kind of more simplistic. And then as Nell grows up, it actually becomes more flowery.
Right. That's the thing I love most about it, is because he's so much into the character voice, despite it being third person. Yeah, we can kind of track her development through the prose, and it absolutely does. Because I mean, you look at these; they're short sentences. They're not. The descriptions are not flowery. They're matter of fact. They're simple. This is what this looks like. This is what it has on it. This is what it does. I opened it, and this is what it did. She's sitting under a ladder, a horizontal ladder, which is just adorable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. So the primer is a huge part of the story, actually. So this is where we're introduced to it, and we begin to understand. Okay, it's funny how cagey the book has been with what the hell is this thing up until this point, right?
Yeah.
Like it's barely been mentioned, actually. It's like even when Hackworth is working on it, he's referring to it by its code name.
Yeah.
It's not, you're like, well, okay, Runcible, okay, maybe that's the book that I know has to be in this story because that's what the story is supposedly about based on the dust jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course it turns out to be this computer book that is perfectly programmed to imprint on a little girl and then educate that little girl to be competent and, I think above all, subversive.
And man, it works pretty well.
It does.
She's pretty subversive. She subverts everything.
Yeah, I think Finkel McGraw successfully subverts all three of the kids who use it.
Yeah, sure.
Tringard says the primer is really the core of the story more than the nanotechnology.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's my favorite. I mean, I love the story of Nell. I love the ingeniousness with which Stevenson writes how the book teaches Nell in a way where we can see what it's doing, but of course Nell can't because she's learning. I think that's just so clever, like the way he does that. And I'm sure you have a slide on it or two, because it's so much of this book. But it's just so clever in the which, like, when you realize the chain is binary, in the Turing Castle, like that was one of the most enjoyable reading experiences I've had in a long time.
Yeah,
because you're just like, oh my god, that's so fucking clever. He's like, in a subversive way, teaching her how to code binary.
Yeah, and then builds it up so that she can run the whole castle. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or like other parts of the book where the primer is clearly paying attention to what's happening and is like, you appear to be getting bullied physically by other children, and the primer is being stolen from you. So we're going to teach you martial arts and self-defense now. And like you said, you get that the book is responding to her surroundings and helping her out. And I think on a level, Nell also gets that the book is like helping her. Like it's more than just a toy to her. It's becomes this incredibly important thing to her. Back like later on when she's in school with the Neo-Victorians, she's like, it seems like she uses all of her free time in the primer. Primer. Damn.
Ha! Gotcha. No, I totally agree. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about this a bit later, but I love the ways in which we see how well the primers work and how attached to the primers the three girls get based on, how it works for them, right? Kind of the core of why it works for Nell is the relationship with Miranda. And the core of the way it works for Fiona is her relationship with her father, and for Elizabeth, it's that there is no relationship, that it was one programmed just to use automated, right? I think hers is one of the ones that
it was either automated or it used a lot of random ractors.
I think you're right. It was random ractors.
Yeah, the mice used automated ones.
Yeah. And that's why they're mice.
Yeah. The other thing about this slide, just to talk about briefly, is how great Harv is. But I think actually the next chapter would also be a good place to talk about. The next page, I mean, would be a good place. No, sorry, we're 2 pages from now we can talk about Harv again.
Yeah, we'll circle back to Harv.
Yeah.
But for now, let's talk about the Dark Castle, Matt.
Yeah. So basically, after growing up with the Primer for a while, Nell decides that it's time to flee her abusive home life. Nell was tired of being in the Dark Castle. She knew it was time to get out. She opened the Primer. Princess Nell knew what she had to do, Nell said. Then she closed the Primer and left it on her pillow. Even if she hadn't learned how to read pretty well, she would have had no trouble finding what she wanted just by using the MC's mediaglyphics. It was a thing she'd seen people use in the old passives, a thing she'd seen when Mom's old boyfriend Brad had taken her to visit the horse barn in Dovetail. It was called a screwdriver, and you could have the MC make them in all different shapes: long, short, fat, skinny. She had it make one that was very long and very skinny. When it was finished, it made a hissing sound that it always made, and she thought she heard Bert stirring on the sofa. She peeked into the living room. He was still lying there, his eyes closed, but his arms were moving around. His head turned from side to side once, but she could see a glimmer between his half-opened eyelids. He was about to wake up and hurt her some more. She held the screwdriver out in front of her like a lance and ran straight toward him. At the last instant, she faltered. The tool went astray and skidded across his forehead, leaving a trail of red stitches. Nell was so horrified that she dropped it and jumped back. Bert was shaking his head violently back and forth. He opened his eyes and looked right at Nell. Then he put his hand to his forehead and brought it back all bloody. He sat up on the sofa, still uncomprehending. The screwdriver rolled off and bounced on the floor. He picked it up and found the tip bloody, then fixed his eyes on Nell, who had shrunk into the corner of the room. Nell knew that she had done the wrong thing. Dinosaur had told her to run away, and she had pestered him with questions instead. "Harv," she said, but her voice came out all dry and squeaky like a mouse's. "We must fly." Yeah. So, like, first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about how Nell is like this horribly traumatized poor girl who, like this is kind of all the heart of the book is kind of, in my opinion, a bit front loaded. It's all of the like young Nell dealing with her horrible home life, and then Miranda sort of also dealing with Nell's horrible home life is like the heart of the book.
Yeah, and the ways in which Nell does not understand what's being done to her. So the text describes it like with enough detail that us, the reader, understands what's happening, but makes it clear that she doesn't. That's the really heartbreaking stuff to me. Like when she's being abused and beaten and stuff, she just like she can't even describe it in the way that any of us would describe it, which is outrage. Like we're outraged at the stuff, but to her that's just life. Like that's just been her life, and so it's the way she describes everything else. It's matter of factly. It's just like, and then this happened, and then when I saw Harv again, he could only see out of one eye, and it's just like, oh my god, like it's awful, and it's so sad. It's so sad. Ugh.
Yeah, and it obviously leaves like this lasting trauma on her, which just persists throughout the book. I mean, it's something that I think is a background element, but then it becomes foregrounded again when she meets the Colonel, and is able to kind of get a bit of, I don't even know if she really gets healing, but she gets at least some kind of recognition and help. And she forms a relationship where they kind of help each other with the stuff they're struggling with.
It's a kind of parental figure that at least treats her with respect, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the Primer, she's never had that. And yeah, I love their relationship a whole bunch. But yeah, this is all rough stuff, and like it's so great because like I want to see her succeed here and stab this dude with the screwdriver, but also I don't, because I don't want, like, I murdered this dude on her conscience for the rest of her life either.
Yeah.
Because like I think that would fuck with her too. It's like, yeah, I was abused by all my mom's boyfriends, and then I fucking killed one of them, and that's how I got out. Like I'm very much cheering for her here, but at the same time, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, it's actually great though. I mean, we still get our moment when he chases them outside, and Judge Fang's subordinate, whose name I'm blanking on, despite having read this book so many times.
Inspector Chang, I think.
Inspector Chang, like, kills him.
Yeah. And again, the way Stevenson like makes it clear to us, the reader, that that's who that is, through Nell's eyes, even though she doesn't know. I like he's so clever in that regard. Like he does this a lot through the Nell's perspective of kind of having to play things on two levels: the level in which Nell sees it and the level in which us, the reader, understands it. And I enjoy that. I enjoy it every time it happens.
Yeah, me too. I think the part about this scene that gets me the most isn't even in this scene. It's when we switch over to Miranda and see, like, she knows exactly what's happening throughout all of this, and she's like desperate for Nell to just run. And then basically, from her perspective, the line goes dead, and she's just horrified that this kid who she cares about so much, something horrible has happened. And like that actually like gets me more than the scene as it's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, as she's like trying to read the lines as forcefully as possible to get Nell to understand that you need to leave. Like she's trying so hard, and the kid is just not really picking up on it until it's almost too late. I love the detail that it's a screwdriver that she builds, right? Because this is perfect for a little girl who doesn't quite understand everything yet. Like she knows this is what she knows how to make, so she's going to make this, which of course is contrasted very much in the end of the book where she generates a badass nano knife. Yeah. I think that's really a really cool touch too.
That's a good point. I never made the connection to the nano sword.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Can't believe you didn't make You got to make all the connections to the nano sword.
Well, that's why we have these conversations, so that I can actually make the connections I should have made in the first place.
Do you think I love to go chocolate with this? Her voice came out all dry and squeaky like a mouse's, which of course mice have a pretty big connotation in this book, right? Her army ends up being the mice. I wonder if that's a symbol that all these girls that she sees are, I don't want to say are this version of Nell, because that's not true, because they're still super competent women that have trained under this thing, but also it does different, it succeeds on her in different ways because they don't have the human touch part of it or whatever. I don't know. I just anytime I see mouse, it jumps out at me because of how the mouse army ends up mattering at the end of the book.
Sure. I mean, I definitely think that she's supposed to be identified with them, but she's set apart from them and set above them also at the same time. So, definitely. I mean, she is one of them, but she's not. So, I like that pull though.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Next up, Judge Fang, the Confucian judge of the least territories who executed Bud, confers with his subordinates about what to do with Harv. And maybe I'll read this with a little more respect for Judge Fang than I had before coming into this conversation, Matt. There is reason to suspect that the victim in that case had molested the boy's sister, Chang put in, as he has a previous record of such accomplishments. Judge Fang fished a drumstick out of the bucket, arranged it on his napkin, folded his hands, and sighed. Does the boy have any filial relationships whatsoever? None, said Miss Powell. Would anyone care to advise me? Judge Fang frequently asked this question. He spoke of it, and he considered it his duty to teach his subordinates. Miss Powell spoke, using just the right degree of cautiousness. The master says, the superior man bends his attention to what is radical. That being established, all practical courses naturally grow up. Filial piety and fraternal submission are they not the root of all benevolent actions? How do you apply the master's wisdom in this instance? The boy has no father. His only possible filial relationship is with the state. You, Judge Fang, are the only representative of the state he is likely to encounter. It is your duty to punish the boy firmly, say with 6 strokes of the cane. This will help establish his filial piety. But, the master also said, if the people be led by laws, and uniformity sought to be given them by punishments, they will try to avoid the punishments, but have no sense of shame. Whereas, if they be led by virtue, and uniformity sought to be given them by the rules of propriety, they will have the sense of shame, and moreover will become good. So, you are advocating leniency in this case, Miss Powell said, somewhat skeptically. Chang chimed in. Mang Wu asked what the filial piety was. The master said, parents are anxious lest their children should be sick. But the master said nothing about caning. Miss Powell said, the master also said rotten wood cannot be carved, and there are only the wise of the highest class and the stupid of the lowest class who cannot be changed. So, the question before us is the boy rotten wood? His father certainly was. I am not certain about the boy yet. With utmost respect, I would direct your attention to the girl, said Chang, who should be the true subject of our discussions. The boy may be lost. The girl can be saved. Who will save her? Miss Powell said. We have the power to punish. We are not given the power to raise children. Those Confucius examples were a mouthful.
Yeah. I have a hard time reading this book out loud too. It has these long, many claused sentences.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically, this is when I wanted to talk about Confucianism specifically, and maybe also some of the retro, reactionary philosophy of the book, where people's, they found that their societies have broken down and really let them down, and they've reacted by reaching into the distant past to find any kind of coherent philosophy to live by. I definitely I never learned anything about Confucianism before I read this book. And I think I never learned anything about it outside of this book, except for when I thought, I read it in this book and thought it was interesting and read a bit about it to edify myself. But it's really interesting, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is just a classic conversation of people talking about a system, a moral system taken from a text in which you have different interpretations, and everyone's kind of an expert of it. A lot of religious conversations happen along this line. A lot of legal conversations happen along this line. It's like, what do we mean here? What do we do? And yeah, of course, the fact that it's taken from this, at least to them, ancient philosophy is really fascinating. I mean, that's like the contrast between Confucianism and Victorianism is so fascinating to me. I think one of the most fascinating lines in the book to me is when they said, we look to the works of the Victorian age, except for Dickens, because he wasn't writing about the Victorian age. He was writing about before that, which is just it's so fascinating, because it's like, oh no, this makes everything look terrible. We can't support.
Yeah, I do wonder if that was true or if that's propaganda, because he was writing about the age before the Victorians that the Victorians were reacting to.
Yes.
And we were right.
I have no idea if that's it doesn't feel true to me. It's not like during Victorianism there was no problems and there weren't poor people that are abused by the system or anything, but yeah,
right. And I mean the same is true of ancient imperial Confucian China,
right.
It's by definition this incredibly, by definition, the most patriarchal patriarchy that you ever patriarchied. But it's doing it in a principled and directed way, where you're like, well, that kind of makes sense. and it's just especially because all the characters take it fully seriously, and this is how they live their lives.
Sure.
And that's always that's one way in which it reminds me of Heinlein, where the biggest way in which he's selling the idea to you is that he just has the character believe the idea. And the great thing about Heinlein specifically is that he'll the next book will be completely the opposite of the first book, and you'll be like, wait, what do you believe? And it's like, Heinlein doesn't believe any of these things. It's what the characters believe. I think the same is true of Stevenson. I don't think he believes the Confucianism is the way. I think he just wanted to show us, hey, here are some characters who really actually believe that Confucianism is the way, and here are their best arguments for it. And you come away from it feeling like it's way more reasonable than probably you otherwise would have.
Yeah, I mean, my sample size is 2, so take this with a grain of salt, but it does seem like he is not the type of author that is going to build a story around his belief system to kind of express that belief system and it to you through narrative. It much more seems like he's the type of author that just likes exploring concepts and ideas, and he's not entirely convinced whether or not he buys into those ideas or not. He's using the story as a way to kind of sort through his feelings on them. And I think that is a fascinating mode of storytelling that I do appreciate, because I can pick up on that same thing that you're saying just through these 2 books.
Yeah. I think Tringard is exactly right that this last line of this page is a great piece of foreshadowing, because basically the crux of the problem here is that they don't have the power to raise children. They can only give the slightest and most distant of nudges and then hope that Harv being present in Nell's life is going to be a positive force and lead to her becoming good.
Yeah.
And then later on you basically hand Judge Fang this opportunity to be like, actually, now you do have the power to raise children.
Yeah.
So,
but I guess this is my, and maybe I'm gonna ask this question, and if there's a slide coming up that is a better time to talk about it, let me know. But I mean, I think a lot of what the book is kind of reckoning with is this idea of like the success of the primer with Nell was because of Miranda, was because of this very intimate one-on-one familial relationship that she had with this ractor. And so like this idea that we will be able to use technology to raise our children in the ways we want, like it just seemed like the idea seemed so removed from responsibility of actual parenting. And I'm wondering what the book's conclusion on that whole thing was, and I'm not sure, because like the example, the data points for that are the mouse army that is raised basically by this book, but it was through when it was rewritten just to use their vocal software, right? So it was not any personalized situation. And I mean, they are not treated as individuals at all. They're kind of treated as a unit. But I'm also, using my Western raisings to value individualism more than group cohesion. So I don't know. I don't know what the book is concluding on that. Like obviously Nell is special, and the reason she's special seems to be because of her relationship with Miranda. I mean, it seems like one of the things the book is saying that like, yeah, you can have a magic book, like, but you need other stuff. Like, I mean, this gets to the whole conversation she has with the Colonel about intelligence versus I even forget what the other word is.
Dang.
What is it? It's intelligence and another word that means intelligence but isn't intelligence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember the conversation you're talking about, but I'm blanking on it. But I want to address, your point about like, is the primer successful in raising the mouse army? I think that I'm going to say yes, just not at all in the way that the Confucians wanted, because the primer is fundamentally a tool for teaching kids to be subversive. Like, yes, it's using the Chinese legends instead of the Western legends as a template, I think, but it's still doing what Hackworth designed it to do in the first place, which was raise them to be subversives. And so the Confucians wanted to raise them to be basically, subordinate and follow by the follow the principles of Confucianism and be good citizens of that file and of the heavenly kingdom or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were. It's interesting though, because they did go subversive, but they all went subversive as a unit together. Basically, they formed their own new file. That was what they did. Just like Nell forms her own. Like she is educated by the Victorians. She decides, okay, maybe someday I'll decide this is for me, but I'm not going to buy into it right now because I don't feel like I have spread my oats. And so then she goes off and she does something else.
Sure.
And so it's the difference between her and the mice though is that she has her individuality, which is given to her by Miranda, and they have their collective nature, which is given to them by the fact that they were all raised together and they all use the software.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the reason why I place more value in the individuality situation is literally just because of the culture I was raised in, right? Where we in America especially values individuality as one of our core tenets. So I look at that and I'm like, yeah, that's much better than this collective group, but no, not necessarily. And I think that's kind of what the book is saying, that it's not necessarily better, it's just different.
Yeah. Well, I think that the mice do choose Nell as their leader, which I think sort of is them recognizing like, okay, she's the first of us, and she's the one who was like given all of the tools to succeed instead of the nerfed version. But I don't know. So the books are also telling them that they have a queen.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely part of it.
Yes.
Cool.
Want to move on?
Yeah, I think so. All right. So this slide is like way out of chronological order, and I haven't stuck to chronological order too well,
Oh my
honestly.
god, the whole
Um,
system is
I
falling
know,
over.
but it's mainly because there's an order in which I wanted to talk about the ideas, and in a book like this, I see that as being way more important. So
Sure.
anyway, this is where I wanted to talk about Neo-Victorian philosophy because we just talked about Confucian philosophy. As soon as I turned 21, sir, Her Majesty, at that time actually, she was still Her Royal Highness, was touring North America prior to her enrollment at Stanford, and I took the oath at Trinity Church in Boston. Why, you're a clever fellow, not blind to culture like so many engineers. You could have joined the First Distributed Republic or any of 100 synthetic files on the West Coast. You would have had decent prospects and been free of all this. Finkel McGraw jabbed his cane at the two big airships. Behavioral discipline that we impose upon ourselves. Why did you impose that on yourself, Hackworth? Without straying into matters that are strictly personal in nature, Hackworth said, carefully, I knew two kinds of discipline as a child. None at all, and too much. The former leads to degenerate behavior. When I speak of degeneracy, I am not being priggish, sir. I am alluding to things well known to me, as they made my own childhood less than idyllic. Finkel McGraw, perhaps realizing that he had stepped out of bounds, nodded vigorously. This is a familiar argument, of course. Of course, sir. I would not presume to imply that I was the only young person ill-used by what became of my native culture. And I do not see any such implication. But many who feel as you do found their way into files wherein a much harsher regime prevails and which view us as degenerates. My life was not without periods of excessive, unreasoning discipline, usually imposed capriciously by those responsible for laxity in the first place. That, combined with my historical studies, led me, as many others, to the conclusion that there was little in the previous century worthy of emulation, and that we must look to the 19th century for stable social models. So, we just had the Confucians sort of laying out what they believe, and now here we have Hackworth literally just saying, hey, this is why I'm a neo-Victorian. Like, I grew up in America. I mean, it's funny because you think of him as being English, but he grew up in America. And he joined this group because he basically only knew either an excess of discipline that was poorly aimed or a lack of discipline, and he thought, okay, well, I need to find a code of personal discipline that is correctly calibrated, and that's what he found in the Victorians. I can't hear you.
No, sorry. Man, like the idea of like, yeah, this past century sucked. I bet the one before this one had better social models is like the most insane thought process in the world to me.
You don't find it persuasive, huh?
No, not at all. It's so perfect though, because this is like the exact kind of nostalgia based like picking and choosing we do about the past, right? Like we look at the simpler times of the past and say like, oh, that was where everyone the discipline that they showed during this is when everyone got it right, and then we all mucked it up in the future, and it's just ridiculous. I think some of I love the way Stephenson writes his character, because like this sentence, my life was not without periods of excessive unreasoning discipline, usually imposed capriciously by those responsible for the laxity in the first place. That sentence is so good. There's so much character in that sentence.
Yeah,
like well, it's such a kind of like a passive aggressive kind of anger at the way he was raised without ever being uncouth about it. It's so good.
I love everything about how the Victorians speak. Mm-hmm. This especially came across in the audiobook, which is what I did this time, where like we've got stuff like I would not presume to imply that I was the only young person ill-used by what became of my culture. Like you have to have like a whole sentence to be like, well, I wasn't accusing you of being rude. Oh, well, I wasn't accusing you of being rude. And so let's all and like just the there are situations where like emotions are really, really high, and the people are just like being so like the formality level increases as the emotions increase.
Yeah.
Because they have to be like, no, I would never imply any. I love it.
You get the opinion that his life was filled with like complete absence of parental authority, and then sudden bursts of like extreme violence committed
Yeah.
towards him, but like
Right.
he won't say any of those words. Like he won't
Right.
say I was beaten brutally by my dad that was never around half the
Yeah.
time.
And he was an alcoholic probably.
Yeah.
Like he probably had a life very similar to Nell's actually.
Yeah.
But he sanitizes it so much here.
Yeah. It's just like you're right. It's 50 words to say I was abused as a kid. And of course he won't say that. Yeah. John brings up a good point. Like stuff happens like this a lot in real life all the time. The real Victorians were famously regressive compared to their parents' generation, and you see this in the U.S. too. Yeah, that's what I love about it. Is it's something that's very realistic to me. Like this idea that we're like, I am miserable right now. I have clear memories of the time immediately before this, and I knew that wasn't any better either. So it must be this way back time. That's the only logical place to find any kind of success.
People must have figured it out back then.
Yeah.
So Scott, you'll be pleased to know that in actual reality, people found this really persuasive, and that there's a whole group of people in the real world who actually want to go back to monarchy because they're convinced that society has become too decadent ever since the English Enlightenment, basically. And this is real. This is a thing.
I'm so upset.
And I think some of these people probably were directly inspired by this book, which is basically the Walter White thing, I think.
This is Fight Club all over again.
It is.
If you read this book and go, yes, we need to start a Victorian file, I'm like, what are you doing?
So now I think you understand why that guy was mad at my article. Because I didn't just say, and Stephenson was right when he talked about how the ancient cultures are the best.
Oh, so oh my God, I'm upset.
I'm glad that we were finally able to close that circle.
Yeah, it's been like 4 years.
I mean, I'm simplifying a bit and glossing over some things, but yes,
sure,
it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking about the neo-reactionaries. I wanted to never have to say that word on a podcast, Jesse, but now I've said it.
Now you've said it. Neat. Love it. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. This is where we're going to talk about subversiveness for a little. We've been touching on this already, but Finkel McGraw is going to advocate for the idea of subversiveness as an important quality for a leader to possess. And then you and I are going to talk about subversiveness for a while.
Okay.
Finkel McGraw couldn't prevent his granddaughter Elizabeth's parents from sending her to the very schools for which he had lost all respect. He had no right to interfere. It was his role as a grandparent to indulge and give gifts. But why not give her a gift that would supply the ingredients missing in those schools? It sounds ingenious, Hackworth had said, startled by Finkel McGraw's offhanded naughtiness. But what is the ingredient? I don't exactly know, Finkel McGraw had said, but as a starting point, I would like you to go home and ponder the meaning of the word subversive. Hackworth didn't have to ponder for long, perhaps because he'd been toying with these ideas so long himself. The seed of this idea had been germinating in his mind for some months now, but had not bloomed, for the same reason that none of Hackworth's ideas had ever developed into companies. He lacked an ingredient somewhere, and as he now realized, that ingredient was subversiveness. Lord Alexander Chung Sink Finkel McGraw, the embodiment of the Victorian establishment, was a subversive. He was unhappy because his children were not subversives, and he was horrified at the thought of Elizabeth being raised in the stodgy tradition of her parents. So now he was trying to subvert his own granddaughter.
I do love this theme. I think this goes beyond the ideas of like regressing to ancient modes of social arrangements, because like you see sort of this sort of thing happening like when a family immigrates to a new country, or when a family decides to take up with a religion where the first generation, they had they're bringing in their previous experiences that drove them to make this decision. The family from the old country remembers how horrible it was. They have incredible work ethic because they want to make something, they want to build a future for their family. The family that joins a new religion is like, basically like Hackworth actually saying like, things can be so unbelievably awful when you don't have some kind of structure and something to look up to. And then their children grow up in that environment and they don't have whatever quality it was that drove their parents to make that decision in the first place, because being raised in a more structured environment denied them that. by virtue of its structure. And so I think it's a really cool, like from a parenting point of view, it's like, how do you raise your kids to to have the qualities that you admire in yourself, um, if you got those qualities from adversity? I think it's really a fascinating question.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, so how, I'm trying to think of instances in which, like, you see the book specifically implant this idea of subversiveness in Nell. And I'm sure there's plenty, just none are coming to mind.
Well, maybe I'm being overly literal, but just like the fact that she's basically skulking around, toppling kingdoms and stealing things the
Yeah,
whole
I guess
time,
that's
like,
right. Yeah.
and tricking people basically,
Yeah.
like a lot of her. That's one thing that I kind of glossed over. Actually, there will be a spot to talk about it later. But like each of her nighttime friends, it focuses on a different aspect of like life. Usually, they're sort of like tuned to different developmental phases, I think, actually. But Purple is the one who's like her charm school teacher, basically, who
Yeah.
teaches her like how to understand people and manipulate people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a lot of what it's doing. Yeah, and I think also just, I do think that, she's kind of described as having this like feral alertness about her even when she's an adult, and I don't think that's the primer. I think that's because she grew up in this horrible environment. So I think that's actually implied to be part of, the equation that results in the person who Nell ends up being.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that like this idea of subversion was instilled in a person who arguably would not have needed it because they were growing up in a system that is going to challenge them constantly. Like that would have been Nell's childhood, whether she had the primer or not. Obviously, it gives her the tools to succeed. But yeah, I mean, like subversion as itself, like in the analogy you just made about like the immigrant family, like Nell is not from birth the Elizabeth who's like gonna spend her entire life in comfort in the system, and be rigid to the norms of it, because why not? Because it's not hurting her at all. She likes it. But like, so Nell is really the perfect candidate for this because she's already probably going to be a little subversive on her own.
Yeah, right. It's interesting. I hadn't really connected how similar Nell's, backstory is to the sketch that we get of Hackworth's backstory until thinking about it just now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kirk also says that like Miranda being a steadying presence also provides something vital that Nell needs. So I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into like why Nell turns out the way she does. It's interesting because in the chat, David makes an interesting point about how like, I think it is pretty tempting for us to just rather blithely dismiss, the Victorians and the Confucians as being, on some level foolish because like, how, either terrible or foolish or both, because, those are old ideologies, and in a certain sense, like moral progress is a debatable idea. Are like, why do we think we're better than them? Is it because we live in our own society? Probably has a lot to do with the fact that we live in our society and not their society.
Yeah.
But
and to be clear, I don't think modern societies are better than the Victorian era. I certainly think we have some we've raised up people on the social status that were not in the Victorian era. The Victorian era was pretty regressive towards women, especially as compared to today. Ironically, considering it was named after the leader who was a woman. Yeah, I mean, I think it is fair. I don't look at like 2020 and say, oh, we're so much better than those stupid Victorians. But I also think a lot of these, at least in this book, a lot of these looking back to these systems is looking back with rose-colored glasses, right? Like, it's like you're picking and choosing only the good parts and then worshiping the entire period.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we have the time. I'm sure we don't have the time to go into a full like breakdown of like people. You can look back at literally any period of history and be like, well, obviously this society is screwed up because
Yeah,
like a
sure.
society is like a society is always going to be screwed up. I yeah, it's utopianism to believe that you could ever have the perfect society. So
Sure.
I think what the best you can do is look back at a particular era and be like, I really admire these particular things that they were trying to do. And I think it's actually a bit funny how the neo Victorians in this story do seem to just pick and choose from the buffet of Victorian things they want to mimic, and then
Sure.
don't mimic the things they don't care to.
Well, yeah, and most of it seems to be the very superficial, external Victorian stuff, like the dress, the manner of speaking, the architecture. Like it seems to be all the like external stuff, not like the actual. Like I know there are actual structures that they're taking from this, but it seems like most of it's just like this shit's it's like it's
Mhm.
cool for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like I would hope that if we're trying to build a better society, we like yes take the best examples from the past to try to build something new. And it seems like these people literally just worship the Victorian era as this ideal time. Emotional stoicism, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Right. And they appear to have laws that are inspired by those
Mm-hmm.
eras. Like it seems like it's probably pretty hard to get a divorce unless you have had sex with 5,000 drummers.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a good point, Kirk. He turn of the century woodcut style diagrams for his inventions, which is just a hilarious. It's just hilarious. Like there's one thing of taking a social system from the past and saying, yeah, they really got it figured out. They're doing way more than that here, though.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Right. It's LARPing. They
They are LARPing.
yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that they definitely are like just enjoying this on some level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right, John. That it is referencing to the Gilded Age for sure.
All right. So shall we move on?
Yeah, we're going
Okay.
so slow. We're like spending 20 minutes on each slide.
Well, yeah, luckily I pulled way fewer slides, which means we're gonna probably miss some stuff that y'all might have wanted to talk about, but that I can't not talk deeply about this book. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we're 90 minutes in and we're on slide 11.
11.
So.
All right. We can pick it up. All right.
Yeah.
So a big part of the book is obviously Nell's adventures in the Primer. So here in this bit, after spending her child, so after after growing up, she's no longer with her nighttime friends, and then she moves on to the realm of King Coyote. From the Primer, Princess Nell enters into the lands of King Coyote. All that hot afternoon, Nell toiled up the numberless switchbacks, occasionally reaching into the bag that dangled at her waist, drawing out a handful of purple's ashes and scattering them behind her like seeds. Whenever she stopped to rest, she could look out across the burnt desert she had just crossed, a tawny plain scabbed with reddish-brown volcanic rock, patches of aromatic greenish-gray shrubs clinging like bread mold to any parts that were sheltered from the eternal wind. She had hoped that when she climbed the face of this mountain she would rise up above the dust, but it had followed her, coating her lips and her toes. When she drew a breath through her nose, it only stung her parched nostrils, and so she had given up trying to smell anything. But late in the afternoon, a cool, moist draught spilled down the mountain and over her face. She drew in a breath of it, hoping to catch some of the cold air before it trickled down into the desert. It smelled of evergreens. We skip to a bit later. Nell turned the page and saw it, just as the book said. There was a 2-page illustration, a color painting, she reckoned. Any one part of it looked just as real as a cinefeed, but the geometry of the thing was funny, borrowing some super-realistic trick from the classical Chinese landscape painting. The mountains were too steep, and they marched away forever into the distance, and if Nell stared, she could see tall castles clinging to their impossibly precipitous slopes, colorful banners waving from their flagpoles bearing heraldic devices that were dynamic. The griffins crouched, the lions roared, and she could see all of these details, even though the castles should have been miles away. Whenever she looked at something, it got bigger and turned into a different picture. And when her attention wavered, when she blinked and shook her head, it snapped back to the first view again. So this is just more fun adventures in the primer. I mean, we talked about it a little bit at first, but just like the way that she interacts with it, the way that you kind of like it's basically an interactive book. Just the idea of this is so incredibly fun.
Yeah, I mean, like I think someone in the chat, and I forget who it was, so sorry for not giving you credit, said that reading the primer sections was their favorite part of the book. And I think it's, first of all, because it's the most traditionally structured. Like it's a story, right? And so it's just a lot of fun to read Nell's adventures in this wonderful land as she's solving puzzles and subverting monarchs. It was Knuckles. Thank you. It's so much fun to read, and as Kirk is saying in chat, it is such a fun idea. Like, just as this thing as a learning device is such a fun idea. It's so cool. It's so freaking cool. I wish I had one. I wish everyone had one. And yes, you still need a mother and a father. Well, not necessarily mother and father, but you still need a parental figures to help guide you through this kind of stuff, right? Like, I think the book shows how that's important in some way. But man, I wish all kids had a thing like this.
I never thought of it this way, but you could almost view Hackworth as her surrogate father, because he did make the book.
Sure.
And he is King Coyote.
Yeah, he is.
So he was sort of leading her here this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. Kirk in the chat agrees it's awesome. I think everybody agrees it's awesome. Everybody wants one.
Yeah.
I want one.
I mean, you have children, right? You would love to give this thing to your kids right now, right?
I mean, I've basically been trying to build this for them for years.
What?
It'd be a computer program that can dynamically generate content in response to what they're doing, rather than just being like most education software.
Yeah, no big deal. Just easy to do.
It's the kind of thing I do in my free time.
Knock it out in a weekend,
Yeah. All right. I think we can move on from there. We all agree the primer's awesome.
Yeah, not much else to say. I love the primer sections. I love everything with, like, the King Coyote Kingdom is probably my favorite of it, for reasons we already said, that it's basically teaching, machine coding from the most simplest to the most complex, one step at a time. I mean, I love the bits where, like, and then she realized it was just a Turing machine. And once she realized that, everything... It's so great.
She realized everything's a Turing machine.
Yes.
And
all right, so we will move on to the next slide, in which Judge Fang discovers that Dr. X has contrived to save hundreds of thousands of young girls from the famine in China. Once again, Matt, you're going way, way out of order here. You're just all over the place.
Yeah, there's an order to the ideas, though, you see.
Sure. Dr. X chose a door, apparently at random, swung it open, and held it for Judge Fang. Judge Fang bowed slightly and stepped through into a room about the dimensions of a basketball court, though with a lower ceiling. It was quite warm and humid, and dimly lit. The first thing he saw was more girls in white dresses bowing to him. Then he realized that the room was otherwise filled with cribs, hundreds of cribs, and that each crib had a perfect little girl baby in it. Young women in pink bustled back and forth with diapers. From place to place, a woman sat beside a crib, the front of her white dress unzipped, breastfeeding a baby. Judge Fang felt dizzy. He was not willing to acknowledge the reality of what he saw. He had mentally prepared himself for tonight's meeting with Dr. X by reminding himself, over and over, that the doctor was capable of any trickery, that he could not take anything he saw at face value. But as many first-time fathers had realized in the delivery room, there was something about the sight of an actual baby that focused the mind. In a world of abstractions, nothing was more concrete than a baby. Judge Fang whirled on his heel and stormed out of the room, brushing rudely past Dr. X. He picked a direction at random and walked, strode, and ran down the corridor, past 5 doors, 10, 50, then stopped for no particular reason and burst through another door. It might as well have been the same room. Lots of babies.
I love this part. I don't know why exactly. I found this, like, there are a few parts of this book that just hit me emotionally, and the idea that, like, especially because Judge Fang, like, thinks that he has a handle on things, and then it's revealed, like, yes, Judge Fang, your arch enemy, Dr. X, your Moriarty has basically done this humanitarian mission and saved hundreds of thousands of baby girls from the famine. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And
I don't remember the exact line, but it's something to the effect of like the care and kindness with you've shown this one girl. I cannot wait to see how you will visit that to all of these.
Yeah.
Because he uses his logic against him, right? He's like, well, it's in the interest of society to protect and care for this girl. Well, Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah, and what Kirk says, this conflict between these characters is so great, and this is the means by which he finally defeats Judge Fang. I love Judge Fang. Apparently, there is like a series of Chinese novels. I think they're literally about a character called Judge Fang, who is like a magistrate of a Confucian kingdom, and he's sort of like um, I'm grasping for a reference that other people will actually understand, but like you know those TV shows they have where it's like a monk or a nun or something solving crimes. It's like a crime procedural, but in the 1400s. You never seen these?
Sure.
Anyway, one of those, except for Confucian China, and I think Judge Fang is meant to be an homage to those books.
Okay, that's cool. I like that. Yeah, you have made me like this character way more than I did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he's great. I like this scene a lot. I like the parts when he's like sparring with Dr. X, which actually takes the form of them having extremely polite tea time together.
Yeah. It's
Cool.
wonderful.
All right, next slide.
Yeah, look at us go.
Yeah, I know. So here we learn about racting through the major character of Miranda, who we've only kind of offhandedly mentioned prior to this, who becomes Nell's surrogate mother. And this is basically a scene from her racting. Just in time, too. The playbill for Geneva had just filled up. Miranda only had a few seconds to switch contexts and get herself into the character of Ilsa before she found herself sitting in a first-class coach of a mid-20th century passenger train, staring into the mirror at a blonde, blue-eyed, high-cheekboned ice queen. Unfolded on her dressing table was a letter written in Yiddish. So tonight she was the secret Jew. She tore the letter into tiny pieces and fed them out her window, then did the same for a couple of stars of David that she rooted out of her jewelry case. This thing was fully reactive, and there was nothing to prevent other characters from breaking into her coach and going through her possessions. Then she finished putting on her makeup and choosing her outfit, and went to the dining car for dinner. Most of the other characters were already in there. The 9 amateurs were stiff and stilted as usual. The 2 other professionals were circulating among them, trying to loosen them up, break through that self-consciousness, and get them into their characters. Geneva ended up dragging on for a good 3 hours. It was nearly ruined by one of the players, who had clearly signed up exclusively for the purpose of maneuvering Elsa into bed. He turned out to be the secret SS colonel, too. But he was so hell-bent on fucking Elsa that he spent the whole evening out of character. Finally, Miranda lured him into the kitchen in the back of the dining car, shoved a foot-long butcher knife into his chest, and left him in the fridge. She had played this role a couple of hundred times and knew the location of every potentially lethal object on the train. After Eractive, it was considered good form to go to the Green Room, a virtual pub where you could chat out of character with the other ractors. Miranda skipped it because she knew that the creep would be waiting for her there. Next was a lull of an hour or so. This is more fun stuff.
I love racting. I think it's
Yeah.
so fascinating. I mean, first of all, I love the idea that this book was written in 1995, right? So I love the idea that Stephenson looks at the future and says, hey, there's really one thing we're just never going to be able to duplicate with sufficient clarity and realness, and that's people, the voice, the actual engagement with another human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're even in the highest technological society ever, we'll still need people to act out things. We'll still need you can't just boot into a system and participate in a murder mystery with computers, because it just won't be the same. I think that's such it's so fascinating, and I don't know how true that's going to end up being, right? I think already voice programs are getting very, very good, right? And I don't think it's going to be too long before we're able to simulate the human voice and you not be able to tell. But it's just basically this is what he said. This is the way it's going to happen in this book, and he built this whole concept around it, and I think it's great. I really love it.
It's interesting because I think at some point I would have said no, I just think Stevenson's wrong. I think we'll easily have AI that can fill these roles. And the thing is, we definitely will have AIs that can fill these roles. But I think about, recently I played the Star Trek Bridge Crew game, which is like the Oculus Rift game, where you're basically, manning the bridge of the Enterprise with you and 3 of your friends. and I played this actually with Elliot and Ruben and another and one of their friends. This was and it's super fun. And the thing is, none of us are as good of actors as some super AI could be, but it's way more fun to do it with them. Like
Sure,
it's fun
sure.
to do things with people. It's fun to do things with unpredictable, sometimes incompetent people who like it kind of livens it up to have like the guy who's supposed to play the SS colonel is actually a creep. I mean, obviously Miranda doesn't enjoy this, like she's the one who's being paid to do it.
Right, right.
But like it's a different experience than it would be if like everything just sort of played out automatically the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think there's lots of conversations happening in the film industry right now about like what's going to happen when computer technology advances to the point where we can just create a fully believable CG character in a live action film and you can't notice the difference. Are we just going to make actors? And I think while certainly films will experiment with that a whole lot, I do think there is going to be a certain segment of the population, and it might be a big one, that is always kind of just really into like watching a movie that has real people in it, right? Like I don't think that's ever going to become the niche part of entertainment.
Well, plus like Thanos is clearly CG, but Thanos is also clearly Josh Brolin.
Yes.
And like that's why Thanos is great, you know.
Sure.
So I think even if we do move to, you know, ractives or you know whatever future thing it's going to be, I think that the human touch will always be important in entertainment.
Yeah, definitely.
He said directly into your ear.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right. I mean, I remember when you remember when the James Dean, like this small indie movie cast James Dean in their movie, a man who's been dead for like 70 years. They were just going to create a CG James Dean, and then the entire internet went,
what? Yeah.
And they said, oh yeah, you're right, that's a dumb idea. Yeah, I think you're right, and that makes me happy because I don't want that to happen. I want it to be human beings, even if it's a CG mock-up of a person with a human being behind it. I still think that matters.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And of course, I mean, we've talked a little bit about Miranda. Miranda is great. You know, she forms this mothering relationship with this girl, and she's desperate to find her. And I found that to be another thing that's just the you know, one of the heart that at the very heart of the story is the fact that like she's just like borderline in desperation to find Nell for the entire book.
Yeah. No, it is great. It did like Miranda just disappears for so much of the book. Like when it's like, oh, she went with the people to do the drumming, and that's part of the thing that I still don't really understand. I don't get the drummers. I mean, I get them.
I'm gonna be honest, Scott. I left the drummers out of the slides.
Okay, good.
I just don't find it that interesting.
Yeah.
It's just kind of it's like the Nam Shub stuff from Snow Crash, where I'm like, okay, I get it. Like it's really cool and fun and interesting, but like it doesn't. I don't know what to do with it other than just be like, yep, it's like parallel computation using biotechnology.
Sure.
In a way that's really trippy and weird and pornographic and so forth. And yeah, great, cool. Moving on.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. So after graduating from Neo-Victorian finishing school, Nell becomes a dominatrix scenario writer. Who saw that coming? I don't think
Not me.
All right. Wake him up, Nell said. Tell him you were lying when you said this wasn't a cryptnet operation. Tell him you want real information. You want military secrets. Miss Braithwaite set the maid out for a bucket of cold water and heaved it over Colonel Napier's body. Then she played the role as Nell had suggested, and did it well. Madame Ping hired people who were good at improvisation, and since most of them never actually had to have sex with clients, she had no trouble finding the good ones. Colonel Napier seemed surprised, not unpleasantly so, at the script change. If you suppose that I will divulge information that might lead to the deaths of more of my soldiers, you are sadly mistaken, he said. But his voice sounded a little bored and disappointed, and the bio readouts coming from the nanocytes in his body did not show the full flush of sexual excitement that, presumably, he was paying for. They still were not meeting their clients' needs. On the private channel to Miss Braithwaite, Nell said, "He still doesn't get it. This isn't a fantasy scenario anymore. This is real. Madam Ping is actually a cryptnet operation. We've been drawing him in for the last several years. Now he belongs to us, and he's going to give us information, and he's going to keep giving it to us because he's our slave. Miss Braithwaite acted the scene out as suggested, making up more florid dialogue as she went along. Watching the bio readouts, Nell could see that Colonel Napier was just as scared and excited now as he had been on his very first visit to Madam Ping several years ago. They kept records. They were making him feel young again and fully active.
Where did this come from? Like, I was so, because the whole book, you're like, all right, we're building up toward Nell going off and realizing her adulthood, because this is a coming of age story. We've seen her from, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old until graduating from school, basically.
Yeah.
What's she gonna do with herself? What's she gonna do with all these skills she's accumulated? A nanotechnology engineer like Hackworth, or maybe a ractor, like she's writing BDSM scenarios.
Yeah.
Huh.
The most subversive thing she could think of. Fuck the police.
And it makes total sense, right?
Yeah. It does.
She's doing, like, it's very intelligent. She's like, I want to learn how people think, and I want to learn how they think, especially in the ways that they don't want other people to understand.
Yeah.
And especially the people who are the most uptight and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I just, until this read, like I said, I hadn't read the book in several years, and I just kind of didn't know what to make of this. And
Mm-hmm.
now on this read through, I was like, okay, I totally get what Stevenson's doing now, and I buy it and I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that was established here is that, like, this place is almost entirely, well, not almost entirely, but mostly attended by Victorians, but they do it, like, super embarrassingly, because it's all like, I don't know how I got in here, but
Right.
if you insist, I will do some of the pornography.
Exactly. Kirk says Neo Victorians are so repressed, and that's such a core part of their character that, of course, this is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny that I'm pretty sure this is the same guy who was like engaging Hackworth about his illicit trips into the leased territories.
Oh my god, I think you're right. I didn't put that together.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Which makes that scene a lot more funny, actually, because
yes, it does.
Because Hackworth is like, oh no, they've caught me. They probably just think I was going to the brothels, though, so I'll play that up. Yeah,
that's so
great.
wonderful. Yeah, I love it.
All right. So this is actually the last slide.
So we get to talk about the ending.
Well, this isn't the actual ending, but we can talk about the ending here. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So basically, Nell is captured by the Celestial Kingdom. She escapes using her nanosword, and she is subsequently bailed out by a surprising party. After a minute or two, she noticed that something akin to a shockwave was making its way down the street far below, moving in slow motion, covering a city block every couple of minutes. Details were difficult to make out at this distance. It was a highly organized group of pedestrians, all wearing the same generally dark clothing, ramming its way through the mob of refugees, forcing the panicked barbarians toward the picket line of the fists or sideways into the lobbies of the dead buildings. Nell was transfixed for several minutes by the sight. Then she happened to glance down a different street and saw the same phenomenon there. She made a quick circuit of the building's roof. All in all, several columns were advancing inexorably on the foundations of the building where Nell stood. In time, one of these columns broke through the last of the obstructing refugees and reached the edge of the broad open plaza that surrounded the foot of Nell's building, where it faced off against the Fist defenses. The column stopped abruptly at this point and waited for a few minutes, collecting itself and waiting for the other columns to catch up. Nell had supposed at first that these columns might be Fist reinforcements converging on this building, which was clearly intended to be the headquarters of their final assault on the Coastal Republic. But it soon became evident that these newcomers had arrived for other purposes. After a few minutes of unbearable tension had gone by in nearly perfect silence, the columns suddenly, on the same unheard signal, erupted into the plaza. As they debouched from the narrow streets, they spread out into many-pronged formations, arranging themselves with the precision of a professional drill team, and then charged forward into the suddenly panicked and disorganized Fist, throwing up a tremendous battle cry. When that sound echoed up 200 stories to Nell's ears, she felt her hair standing on end because it was not the deep, lusty roar of grown men, but the fierce thrill of thousands of young girls, sharp and penetrating as the skirl of massed bagpipes. It was Nell's tribe, and they had come for their leader. Nell spun on her heel and made for the stairway. Oh, that always gets me, man. I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. So like this happened because she like made the symbol on the top of the building, right?
Yeah,
like that's what drew them here. And like I find it so fascinating that she made the symbol like on a whim, right? Like the text specifically says like she didn't really know why she was doing it. She just kind of did it. It just felt like the thing to do.
Yeah. Well,
is this like some sort of like pull?
I think she already had the nanocytes in her, and that's
Right.
part of what drove her to do it. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's implied because normally she's not prone to obeying kind of like flights of intuition like this.
Yeah.
Kirk points out the end of this section where she's holding her book and her sword. Just like everything about this is awesome to me.
Yeah.
Like this is one of the bits that like hit me emotionally.
It's so cool. I love how the girl army like takes down the enemy, right? Where like one of them stands in front of them and two like get them from the side, lift up their legs, and then the one sneaks behind and stabs them in the back.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's really cool.
It's
really
cool. Funny because like ever since I heard about that, I've always thought like, man, that would work so well. Like imagine people are like grabbing your legs and like you're trying to fend off the one in front of you who you think is going to stab you while fighting off the ones who are going for your legs at the same time, and then you're stabbed from the one that you didn't even see because it would be so like it's kind of terrifying. It's kind of a horror movie thing too.
Yeah. I mean, I look like when I first saw this badass group of girls like charge this building, I was like, oh my god, so many of these little girls are gonna die, and then it's like, and yeah, they were only like kind of injured.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's great. So we can talk about the ending now. I just like I left out the drummers so thoroughly from these slides just because I was like it's wacky, but also it's not that complicated and it's not that interesting for me. Right. Maybe you wanted to talk about it more.
So I just kind of want to break it down and then kind of try to get our heads around what it means. And I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. So so in the end, everyone's caught like all these refugees and other files are caught on the beach, right? And the hands are the fist rather. Not I keep calling them the hands.
Yeah.
The fist the Foot Clan is slowly advancing on them as part, and they're like with the Celestial Republic, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So they're slowly advancing on them, and then they go into like underground tunnels to where the drummers are, and connect the refugee people to the source, and then Miranda's gonna burn up to compile a program that will create the seed, which is democratization of this entire power. But Nell stops that from happening because she doesn't want to lose Miranda. Like she injects the counter nanobots into Miranda by like biting her lip open, and making out with her mom, which is cool. So she saves Miranda, and then the drummers are just like, okay, well, we'll wait till we got that person, and then we'll finish compiling our program. And then it ends. The end.
Yeah.
So yes. Okay. So
I like what I think is that the decision was in some sense left up to Nell.
Sure.
And it's left in her hands, and the end. I don't know whether Hackworth is responsible for this or not. Like you get the sense that kind of the drummer dream is its own thing. Like I don't know if Hackworth was like in charge of that so much as it was using him just as much as it was using everyone else.
Sure.
He just happened to have the nanotechnological expertise, and perhaps even genius, since apparently no one else could do it. I don't know. Like I think, I guess where I really land on the book is like you feel a mild sense of like what when you finish, but also you're like, okay, well, Nell found Miranda, Miranda found Nell.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Hollywood is a hero. Hackworth, I don't know what the hell's up with Hackworth. He's
He
somewhere.
disappears under the ocean and his hat falls off.
That's true. He disappears into the ocean and his hat falls off, which is fine. That's fine. Um, who else is there? Judge Fang is a like a functionary with the Celestial Kingdom, like he wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like the point is everybody kind of everyone's where they belong. It's their own satisfying ending. The questions that remain are like, what just the deal with the seed?
What? Yeah,
is
like
that...
what does the book want me to think about the seed? Like,
yeah,
because I think you're right that there are two opposing arguments, right? That this is literally like opening up this amazing power source to everyone, and not there's no restriction, there's no control over it. And the counter effect of that is that yeah, they can build whatever they want, including horrible, awful weapons. Like the protocols seem to exist for a reason, and they are good, but they are also bad because they they create, as we talked about, they create scarcity in a world without that there is no scarcity. So I just don't know what I'm supposed to take about. Like, Nell gets her mom. That's great. I'm very happy for her. But did she choose to stop it from happening solely because she wanted to save her mother, or did she stop it because she didn't support the idea of the seed?
Yeah, I don't think she had any idea that the seed was involved, did she?
Right. I don't know. I don't know.
That's why it doesn't really come together. I do think that sorry, who just said that? Somebody, I want to credit the person who said it, but someone just said Hackworth, the Dr. X, yeah, sorry, Kirk says Dr. X's read on Hackworth was that as an engineer, he could never leave his magnum opus unfinished, and that this was actually correct. So I guess you could even read that moment when Hackworth like submerges and leaves his hat behind as like him realizing maybe that he's going to finish the seed now, even if he thinks it's on some level he thinks it's a bad idea. He's going to do it anyway.
Sure. I mean, it just needs a person to be the
sacrifice,
melty sacrifice, right?
Yeah, which is, yeah, I guess. I mean, maybe design a better system.
Yeah, I feel like an engineer would look at that and go, I don't know
right.
about this.
I mean, I bet you do. Like, just speaking as a scientist, I think you could probably do that same exact amount of computation if you just spread it out over like a day or two instead of 5 seconds, which is apparently what happens.
No.
Yeah.
You need to do it. You need it. Like, there's nothing else.
But like, just you can still, but like, it's okay. All right.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I found the whole drummer orgy thing rather uncomfortable, and just like especially because I don't understand it. Like
it just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think what happens, the reason I don't like it, is so Hackworth is like on this mission to find the alchemist, right? And he winds up in this drummer orgy, and we're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, what is going on? And the woman turns into ashes, and they sweep up the ashes, and the orgy's over, and we have no idea. Yeah, and then they eat all and we have no idea what happened. And then the book cuts away from him, and it is maybe 100 pages before we learn what the hell that was at all.
And he was gone for years.
Yeah, because he's gone for 10 years. And so it's so much time that I'm just like, what the fuck? What's going on? What is happening in this book now? What is this? And yeah, I think that's why I didn't like it. It's kept so nebulous for so long that I was just like, well, that was a thing, I guess. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. I don't hate it. I think, I forget who said this above, but they said like one thing that like unfortunately stuck in their mind as like a very salient thing about this book is this kind of like disturbing orgy followed by death scene, which is, it just leaves you feeling like kind of gross because you don't know, like, did that woman volunteer for that, or was she went into a tunnel one day and then was in a trance for her entire life until she dies of incineration. and like that left me with a bad feeling. And like it's such a visually memorable scene that like that sticks with you for a long time. And it's like, okay, it's not actually that important a part of the book, but it definitely sticks with you.
It is visually memorable for sure. Like it I mean, I think the writing's good of it. Like, I think the way he writes the orgy is pretty effective. But yeah, I was just kind of the whole time I was just kind of like, what? And then like Hackworth wakes up 10 years later, and he's like in the middle of banging someone, and you're just like, what? Why is he doing that? Where? What? And then they eventually explain it to you.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think it is interesting because I think that your problem with it is actually slightly different from my problem with it, which and Jesse in the chat says that he really enjoyed it. So, you know what? Everybody's got different takes on the drummers.
Sure.
The drummers are weird.
And I mean, I read Stephen King. I read weird sex shit all the time. It's not the weird sex shit that turned me off of it. It's just that it just comes out of nowhere, and I have no way of like emotionally like identifying it and like cataloging it. You know?
Yeah. Right. It's yeah, it kind of reminds me of my problem with the scene where they go into the boat and they do the big ractive thing, which actually turns out to be very much related to the drummers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it's like it feels so abstract, and like you're like, I don't know what I'm watching, and I know that this means something, and I know that you're trying to like do the thing where it's like a David Lynch dream sequence where it's like, okay, yeah, I know this means something, but it's so opaque to me that I'm getting a bit frustrated, and I'm out of the book. I guess that's what I would say is like it's one of the things where I'm like really aware that I'm reading a book because I'm like I'm confused, and thus I'm not into the book.
Yes. I agree with that. I think that's a good way of putting it, that the opaqueness really pulls me out of it, because yeah, I mean, like I did like that's in my head. It's like, this gotta be really important for something, but I don't know what.
Yeah. I like Isaac makes a point about the author's trying to say something about blending of people and computers, which you could also say the primer is a form of that. That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Isaac.
Yeah, totally.
It is. Jesse makes I think this is a good point, that like it's sort of like a technological version of the collective unconscious, and Stephenson clearly thinks that the collective unconscious is a pretty powerful concept, or just the unconscious mind, perhaps. I think that's true.
Yeah. And literal encapsulation of sleeping on a problem. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sleeping on a problem for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fugue state.
Banging on a problem.
A bang state. Yeah. Well, so that's all the slides, and now is usually the part where we just kind of chill out for a little bit and let people talk about the book. I mean, we're probably running up on any sort of sane, reasonable time limit, but
yeah, we passed that a while ago.
Yeah. Well, okay, but it's the Diamond Age, though, Scott.
But it's the Diamond Age. Kirk says, I want to take a moment to explore the quiet horror of what the least territories are, which is something that only grows the more you look at the book. That's interesting. Yeah. What do you feel about the least territories, Matt?
I mean, basically, it's sort of this like zone of the poor and disenfranchised, and the theets that live there. It's funny we didn't talk about the word theet, but it's I think it is clever of Stevenson to be like, it's so normal to be in one of these files that there's actually a special word for people who aren't part of a file.
Yeah.
Which is theet. Actually, it's like the second word of the book, because it's a theet visits a mod parlor. Yeah, I mean, it's that fake scarcity that you were talking about.
Yeah, and Kirk says they are the outer band of the city's nanotechnology defenses. Yeah, because there's this great line of we didn't talk about the nanotech, like the dog things, whatever they were called.
The dog pod grid.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so crazy. Like that. Like, I mean, it makes perfect sense that there's nanobots just fucking everywhere,
Hmm.
and we need to protect ourselves from bad nanobots. So we just have this grid of nanobots like constantly just chilling out, protecting us from things.
Well, also
And,
just like the air itself is saturated with them too,
right.
everywhere.
Like I forget what it was called, but when they fight and they're like the corpses of the bots are the dust that the people are covered with.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, I think it's strongly implied that the reason Harv has terrible, like some kind of horrible lung problem is because of all of the soot that he basically breathed in from the nanomachines,
Yeah.
which really strikes you as very Dickinson, right? Like the little boy gets the black lung, not from being a coal miner or being a chimney sweep, but from the nanotechnological warfare.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, that's a problem. Like, he's definitely not the only one, right?
Yeah.
And yet no one cares about this. To go on
Yes.
what Kirk is saying about the least territories, no one cares. Like, this is just fine. This is just
Yeah.
what happens sometimes.
Yeah. They're supposed to make the nanomachines like dissolve harmlessly, but when it comes to warfare between files, they don't follow these rules
Mhm.
necessarily. Um, and so bad stuff. I know Dickens is in Victorian Kyrgyzstan. I know that, okay?
He just happened to write when that person was queen. That's all that means. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's just a coincidence.
yeah.
Um,
So John asks, a big part of the book is how regressive a lot of it in terms how regressive a lot of it is in terms of social development. Like a large part of the population is illiterate, they're child laborers, etc. Why do you think this is in this book? Um, that's interesting. I think.
I think yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I just think that this is a world where society has collapsed
Mm-hmm.
and people are rebuilding society. And when you're, uh, I I think that's just what would actually happen. Like if we actually had a social collapse, we would regress socially.
Mm-hmm.
We would lean on, we'd have anybody who could work would have to work. You would lose public education, and thus everyone would be illiterate by default.
Yeah.
Unless somebody went out of their way to educate those people. So,
I also
just be, yeah,
I also just think like in a society in which you can create anything out of a machine, the incentive to educate the disenfranchised isn't there anymore.
yeah. Like what job are we even educating you for
Right. Right.
if there's no like need for material goods?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, I mean, to me it's like if you don't even have the machine of capitalism, capitalism requires that you educate people so that they can become, good both producers and consumers.
Right.
But if there's no producers because everything is free, and there's no consumers because everything is free, then even capitalism no longer has any interest in educating you.
Mm-hmm.
And so what incentive is there to educate? Yeah, I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Trengard is asking, as a parent, like how the primer has affected my thinking. I mean, I wasn't joking that I've for like 5 years been working on a piece of software that is like a sort of a dynamical teaching thing that was very much inspired by the primer in its original form. But like I I was, ruminating on it for all of the years ever since I read the book. And then when I had kids, I was like, I would just like to do this as a project. And I've been sharing bits of it on the Discord if people didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the thing you're kind of like trying to lay over top of roguelike right now, right?
Yeah, like because I got the teaching part of it working pretty well actually. And then when I finally got my kids to play it, they would get bored pretty fast because it really is just kind of like mainlining the information. And I was like, okay, like it's working. They're actually learning the stuff, but I need to make it more fun. Kind of like how the illustrated primer is not just the primer telling Nell things. It's a fun story. It's an adventure. It's a game, if you will. So that's why I'm trying to make it more of a game. So you could even say that I'm just being even closer to what the primer actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sweet. Sweet. So John asks, why do the files with essentially unlimited resources allow social injustice to exist? Which is a good question. Why?
Yeah,
Because people suck. Because people suck.
Yeah, right. I continue the thread I was just talking about, where like there's no incentive for it to be otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, like the fact that we all actually depend on each other materially, like for reals, forces us to care about justice in a way that you don't have to care about justice if you don't actually depend on your neighbor. I really think that that's one of the corrective. It's one of the correctives of capitalism, actually.
That states to a pretty depressing outlook on like base humanity, though, right? Like that's like without incentive, we don't give a shit about each other.
I mean, true. Like you can view Star Trek as sort of the converse of this, where
Mm-hmm.
they do have essentially the same kinds of technology. They have replicators. They have limitless energy and so forth. And they choose to spend all their time reading Shakespeare, playing musical instruments, and exploring. And it's like, yeah, wow, that's a super positive view of humanity, and I sure hope that we are actually like that.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect we're not. It's aspirational. Like I love aspirational fiction, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I think that Stevenson thinks very little of humanity. Actually, that would be my take.
Yeah, I think it seems like it for sure. David points out that a service economy still can exist in this environment, like ractors, for example. Like that is a service that someone can provide and get.
Yeah.
But like, there's no incentive structure for payment.
Yeah.
I mean, like what's happened is the files have and the economic protocol. I love that's called the economic protocol because it's literally saying because we need to create an economy in a place that needs no economy anymore, we're going to create an economic protocol. I mean that's their like the system as established is creating markets in a place that probably doesn't need them anymore.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and then I also think that like the only remaining economy is the service economy in a sense, right? Because there's no manufacturing economy anymore because you have nanotech now.
Sure.
So like all of the jobs are either service jobs or they're like craftsman jobs. So that's the only thing that people, and even then it's like, why do you even need what what are you're paying me money, what am I going to spend this money on?
Well, the economic protocols provide stuff for you to spend money on.
I guess so. Yeah.
That's interesting. I've had such a good time having this conversation.
Yes, I could talk for another hour with you fine folks, but I think we do have to wrap this up.
Yeah, Kirk points out that like the ultra rich, like in a world in which anything can be generated by a machine, stuff created by hand becomes the most expensive, most sought after things, which is kind of what exists in our economy already, right? Like mass produced furniture is considerably cheaper than by hand crafted furniture, which is seen as like fancy and nice because this was created by hand. It's just an extrapolation of that.
I mean think about software. Like software is $5 or whatever for because you can make infinite copies of software for free.
Sure.
Once you've made one version of it, or even free and paid for by ads in some cases, which is very diamond agey.
Yep. All right, let's talk about next month because we'd be here forever if we kept going.
So thank you so much, all of you. Next month's book will be, Scott, are you showing it?
I am.
The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. So we'll be meeting up on Friday, July 31st at 9:30 p.m. Central Time to talk about that book. I know nothing about this book, Scott. Nothing.
Me too. I know absolutely nothing. This book was recommended by a friend of mine a couple years ago, I think. Maybe just a year ago. I don't remember. And then I saw that someone had submitted it as well. And I was a little surprised. It was one of those books that I make the assumption that if I've never heard of something, nobody has heard of it. But this was the runner up in the last vote we had, and then it fucking blew up on this one and won handedly. So I guess there's a lot of interest in this book, so that makes me really excited to read it.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to build a computer out of mirrors or chains or
No,
anything like
I
that?
think there's some Groundhog Day shit going on. That's my guess.
Okay. Do you think they're going to build a computer out of like time loops? They always build computers. Our patrons always make us read books where people build computers out of things. I'm
That's
just
true.
being
That's true.
honest.
So, yeah, I think Harry August is going to build a computer at some point. Let's say
Yeah.
that. That's a prediction.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for all of you folks that tuned in live. It was such a pleasure talking to all of you, especially you, Kirk, because we said your name like 30 times. But also you, Tringard, and Knuckles, and John, and Kirkistan, and Mary, and anyone else whose name I'm missing.
Isaac.
Isaac, yes.
John.
Once again, like the most fun part about this to me is I get to talk to Matt like 40 hours a week. I'm sick of talking to Matt. I love talking to you folks. And it's great having you here live. So if you're listening to the podcast version of this, try to make it to next ones. It is really a fun live streamed experience. So Friday, July 31st at 9:30 p.m.
Yeah. If you like what we do here at Doof Media and you want to see more of it, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia and consider donating $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. You'll get access to the private Discord server where we hang out, as well as the ability to vote for which books we cover on this show, and tons of other cool stuff. So go check that out.
Yes, that's patreon.com/doofmedia. And if you have any questions or comments or just want to reach out to us about this book or any of the books we have covered on the book club, which has got to be in the 30s now, Matt. We've been doing this for a while. I think it's actually coming up on 2 years. No, more than 2. No, it's coming up on 3 years.
I counted it recently, and it was way more than I would have believed.
Yeah,
yes.
It's crazy. So let us know how you feel about any of those books. You can do it on our Twitter account at Doof Media or email us at doofmedia@gmail.com. And that Twitter account is also where you can go to see, just any news about any of our shows, including the book club. We usually remind people when it's coming up the week before. So definitely follow us there so you won't miss any of our updates. All right, well, that is it for us. I guess we'll see you guys next month with this Harry guy.
Yeah, bye-bye.
I don't know why there's background noise on my recording. It's driving me crazy.
That's what the old silency thingy is for.
Silency?
The silency thingy.
The noise remover?
Yeah. That's what I said.
Whew. Hey, Vale. How you doing?
It's been 11 years of podcasting.
It's been 43 years.
For 63 years, I've put up with it now.
And I can still smell the fresh paint. The china had never been used.
I don't actually know what that's from.
They called the Titanic the ship of dreams. And it was. It really was.
Diddly-lily. Are we still on air?
Yes. Our recordings have stopped. We're still on air.
Yes. This is the part of the show where we do sort of...
Where I'm just trying to make sure my recording recorded correctly.
Okay.
Look, Titanic is a great movie, and I'm not going to feel embarrassed about that. It's Jimmy Cams. He knows how to make a movie.
Yeah, he does.
Thank you. That helps. Yeah, people. So people have different names on YouTube, on Discord, and on Twitch when I stream on Twitch. So like, I just have to pretend like I know everyone. Because, let's see how I get rid of that. And I'm sure there's plenty, just none are coming for the tools to succeed. But yeah, I mean, like subversion as itself. Okay. Yeah, I sound okay. Cool. I was wondering, Matt, If you
Yes.
want to stream, if you want to start doing these on Twitch instead of YouTube,
We can try it. Can't hurt, right?
yeah. I mean, I think YouTube's or Twitch's delay between stuff is just a better it's just a better setup. There's less delay. I've never had any problems with Twitch. It's just as public.
I want to do it. Oh, it does ad rolls in the middle of a stream? Well, that's not optimal.
That's annoying. Well, just subscribe. Just kidding. Yeah, that's annoying. I knew they did ones at the start.
Yeah, I don't remember ever getting like a random ad roll when I watched you play games. I definitely wanted to start though.
Okay. Yeah, everything's good on my end, so I'm ready to shut her down.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for hanging out. This is one of my favorite Doof related things, honestly. So
yeah, I really love doing this. So we appreciate you guys doing it with us because it makes it so much more fun. So hope to see you guys around the Discord and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll be on Twitch streaming video games as I do forever now because it's my only job.
All right.
All right, folks. Have a good weekend, everyone. Where's the turn off the stream button? There it is. Have a good weekend, everyone. Good night.